Hi, my name is Mike Angley. I'm a member of the Military Writers Society of America, also known as the MWSA. It's my pleasure to participate in this online seminar about using violence as a literary device. I write in the mystery and thriller genre. I'm currently two-thirds of the way through a trilogy called the Childfinder Trilogy. Since it's a mystery thriller series, I tend to use violence a lot as a literary device in my writing. I guess my general rule of thumb would be that violence should be used judiciously in your writing. More or less, when I use violence with my protagonist, I tend to use it a little more cautiously than I would when I would use violence for example, describing a plot that my villain or my antagonist happens to be involved in. The reason I think that a protagonist's use of violence needs to be a little more judicious is that you don't want to turn off your readers. You want your readers to actually like your hero, and if he goes a little too overboard with violence, then that may be kind of a turnoff for some readers. On the other hand, if you don't use enough violence with really any of your characters, it could leave your readers feeling a sense of unsatisfaction with what just happened in the plot. And you certainly don't want that either. When it comes to your villains, your antagonists, you can use violence probably a little bit more than you would with your protagonist. And you want to probably do that in such a way and construct it in such a way that your violence is meant to show how dislikable that particular character happens to be. You really want your readers to hate the bad guys and love the good guys is kind of the bottom line. Now, since I write a series of books, a mystery series of books that have to do with children who were victimized, one rule of thumb and a very strong caution is that when you're describing violence that involves a child, where the child is obviously the victim of some kind of violence, you need to be extra cautious with that. There are certain taboos and things that you don't want to cross over into. You don't want your violence to be so in your face that it offends the reader. And that's very true, especially when it comes to any type of sexual violence or sexual situations involving children. It's best to leave that in an implied type sense without going into too much graphic detail. Nobody wants to read that. Your readers will really clearly understand it if you describe it in sort of oblique terms rather than in very direct terms. When it comes to adult victims of violence, I tend to go a little bit more into graphic detail in my writing, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that if you want your antagonist to be truly dislikable, then if you kill off an elderly person, a total innocent, somebody who really shouldn't have to die in a story, people are not going to like that bad guy much at all, and they're really going to be relying upon your hero to make sure that the bad guys get their comeuppance. Now, in my stories, my main character is an Air Force special agent called Patrick O'Donnell. He's got an interesting duality in his personality, and I use that duality a lot, especially when it comes to describing violence. On the one hand, he's a federal law enforcement agent, a badge-carrying, gun-carrying special agent. He's got a very strong, rough-and-tumble nature to him, a kick-ass kind of personality. He's very experienced in criminal investigations and kicking in doors and capturing bad guys, as well as counterterrorism operations in the Middle East. So he's got that rough and tumble aspect to his nature. He also has a very strong Christian nature to him. He's very spiritual. He's a father, he's a husband, he's a devoted Catholic, and a lot of times those two contrasts between the rough and tumble world of the federal investigator and then the at-home, very spiritual, loving family kind of guy come together, and they kind of pull him in different directions. I tend to want to make sure that there are times when that main character, when he's engaging in violence, he may want to go a little bit overboard, but I can't do that because of that nice nature that he's got. So that sort of contrasting aspect pulls him back a little bit, and it's usually kind of helps keep him in check when he's doing something, when he's going about chasing down a bad guy or kicking in a door or whatever it happens to be. In my second book, which is called Childfinder Resurrection, I do have a scene where that comes into play very strongly. It takes place in the woods where the hero, Patrick O'Donnell, encounters the real villain in the story for the first time. They get into a fist fight, and they're duking it out, and they're rolling around, and they're punching, and they're kicking each other. And there comes a point in time where the hero manages to grab the bad guy and hold him down in a chokehold. Now he has a choice to make. He could snap his neck and kill him instantly if he wanted to, but that federal law enforcement nature kicks in, the spiritual side of him kicks in a little bit. So instead of doing that, he reaches down, and the guy's wearing a hood, and he wants to identify him. He wants to find out who this bad guy is. So he begins to raise the shroud up, and just before he's able to get a good look at the bad guy manages to get away. So that's an example of where in using violence, the good guy, a little bit extra cautious, and maybe in that particular situation it didn't serve him well. Now he's not without his flaws, as all good protagonists are. They have their strengths and they have their weaknesses as well. There's this one scene that I have in Childfinder Resurrection where he does go a little bit overboard, but fortunately it has a good ending. He's in a farmhouse, and he's going from room to room, clearing the farmhouse, looking for the villain once again, the guy that escaped from the woods. And he's getting through the farmhouse, and he's pretty much at the last room that the bad guy could possibly be hiding in. He clears the bedroom, but there's a closed bathroom door. Now, he gets a little overconfident in thinking or in believing what he thinks is on the other side of that door. He thinks it's the bad guy's hiding in there. But there's still a chance that the reader's aware of, but he's not necessarily, that there might be an innocent victim on the other side of the bathroom door. So the protagonist pulls his weapon out and he starts to fire through the bathroom door. And it's kind of a frightening scene because you're left not really knowing what's going on. What's going through the mind of the character. Is he gone a little bit crazy here, the main character, or is he doing something that's good?